Alice is at a garden party, feeling out of place among the rigid expectations of her world. She's expected to accept a marriage proposal from Hamish, but something catches her eye, a rabbit in a waistcoat. Without hesitation, she chases after it, intrigued by its strange appearance. The rabbit leads her to the trunk of an old tree, where she falls into a hole, tumbling down into a mysterious room. In this room, she discovers a key, a drink that shrinks her, and a cake that makes her grow. She navigates her way through the strange objects, eventually shrinking down to the right size to fit through a small door. On the other side, she enters an enormous garden where the adventure truly begins. Alice quickly meets a peculiar group of creatures: the white rabbit, the dormouse, a dodo bird, and the tweedles. The white rabbit is certain she's the right Alice, though the dormouse isn't so sure. They lead her to a wise caterpillar named Abbasalam, who consults a scroll that foretells of Alice's return to slay the fearsome Jabberwocky. Alice, confused and insistent that she's not the Alice they're looking for, is suddenly caught up in a chaotic situation when the Knave of Hearts arrives with red-carded soldiers and a terrifying creature called a Bandersnatch. Chaos erupts, and Alice faces the Bandersnatch, convinced it's all just a dream. The creature scratches her, snapping her back to reality. Alice escapes, but the dormouse manages to pluck out the Bandersnatch's eye in the process. After the confrontation, Alice bumps into the Tweedles again, but they're soon captured by a giant bird and taken to the Red Queen's castle. Meanwhile, the Knave of Hearts reports to the Red Queen, who orders Alice to be found. The Knave enlists a bloodhound named Bayard to track her down, promising freedom for Bayard's family. As Alice continues her journey, she encounters the Cheshire Cat, who leads her to the Mad Hatter's home. Here, she finds the Dormouse and the eccentric March Hare. The Mad Hatter is thrilled to see Alice, believing in the prophecy of her slaying the Jabberwocky. Alice insists she's not the Alice they're waiting for, but the Knave and Bayard close in. The Hatter hides Alice in a teapot, while the Dormouse scolds Bayard for leading the Knave to them. Bayard explains his motives, trying to throw the Knave off the trail. After the Knave leaves, the Hatter and Alice venture into the woods. They pass through the charred remains of a once thriving village. The Hatter explains how the Red Queen has taken over Wonderland during Alice's absence, banishing the White Queen and seizing her powerful Vorpal sword. As they talk, the Knave reappears, forcing the Hatter to act quickly. He places Alice on his hat and flings it across a river, sacrificing himself to the Knave so Alice can escape. Bayard soon finds Alice and retrieves the hat. Alice convinces Bayard to take her to the Red Queen's castle to rescue the Hatter. On the way, they come across the White Rabbit, who is helping with a croquet game at the Red Queen's court. Alice, still small, asks to be made larger, and the White Rabbit gives her a piece of cake. She eats too much and grows to an enormous size, disrupting the game. The Red Queen, not recognizing Alice, assumes she is someone named from Umbridge, and, impressed by her large head, welcomes her into the royal court. Meanwhile, the Hatter is brought before the Red Queen. Initially, he is sentenced to beheading, but he cleverly stalls by offering to make the Queen a hat fitting her enormous head. The flattery works, and the Queen postpones his execution. During this time, Alice learns that the Vorpal sword, the only weapon capable of slaying the Jabberwocky, is hidden in the castle, guarded by the Bandersnatch. Determined to retrieve the sword, Alice sneaks into the Bandersnatch's quarters, armed with the creature's plucked eye, which she received from the Dormouse. She bravely returns the eye to the Bandersnatch, who, in turn, allows her to take the sword. With the sword in hand, Alice meets with the Hatter in his quarters. The Dormouse joins them, but their reunion is cut short when the Knave of Hearts barges in. The Dormouse accidentally reveals Alice's true identity, prompting the Knave to attack. Alice narrowly escapes, running into the courtyard where the Bandersnatch helps her flee from the castle. Bayard, having remained loyal to Alice, accompanies her as they make their way to the White Queen's castle. Meanwhile, the Red Queen orders the Hatter and Dormouse to be executed the following day. However, the clever Cheshire Cat intervenes, using his trickery to take on the Hatter's appearance, allowing the real Hatter, Dormouse, White Rabbit, Tweedles, and Bayard's family to escape. They all regroup at the White Queen's castle, where Alice is restored to her normal size by the Queen's magical potions. With the Vorpal sword in hand and the Frabjous day fast approaching, Alice begins to understand the weight of the prophecy. She's expected to slay the Jabberwocky, but doubt still lingers in her mind. Nonetheless, the White Queen prepares for battle, and her army stands ready to face the Red Queen's forces. The next morning, the fateful Frabjous day arrives. Both the White Queen and the Red Queen's armies assemble on a massive checkerboard battlefield. The tension is palpable as the two queens meet in the center. The White Queen, ever the peacemaker, pleads with her sister to avoid war, but the Red Queen, stubborn and power-hungry, refuses to back down. Alice steps forward, donning the armor prepared by the White Queen. She grips the Vorpal's sword tightly, feeling the weight of the prophecy bearing down on her. Across the field, the Red Queen summons her champion, the fearsome Jabberwocky. The monstrous creature descends from the sky, its wings casting a dark shadow over the battlefield. As the armies clash, Alice faces the Jabberwocky in a one-on-one battle. She recalls her father's words about believing in 6 impossible things before breakfast, using this mantra to bolster her courage. With each impossible thought, she gains confidence, and their duel intensifies. The Jabberwocky, with its razor-sharp claws and powerful tail, is a formidable opponent, but Alice's determination and skill with the Vorpal sword give her the upper hand. Meanwhile, the battle between the two armies rages on, with soldiers clashing and chaos erupting on the checkerboard. The White Queen's forces fight valiantly, inspired by the courage Alice displays. The Mad Hatter, freed from captivity, leads a group of rebels in the fray, using his eccentric combat style to take down Red Queen soldiers. As the fight reaches its peak, Alice finally lands a decisive blow, slaying the Jabberwocky. The creature collapses defeated, and the Red Queen's army falters, demoralized by the loss of their champion. The Red Queen, in a fit of rage, demands that her soldiers kill Alice, but they hesitate. The prophecy has been fulfilled, and their loyalty to the tyrannical queen wavers. The White Queen, victorious, steps forward and declares that the Red Queen is to be banished to the Outlands for her crimes. Bound by her vow not to harm a living creature, the White Queen spares her sister's life, but condemns her to a life of exile. The Knave of Hearts, who had served the Red Queen faithfully, is also punished. Chained to the deposed queen, he is dragged away, his last act being an attempted betrayal, which is thwarted by the Hatter. With the battle over, the White Queen's army celebrates. The Mad Hatter performs a jubilant futterwupping dance, a wild and joyous expression of their hard-won freedom. The entire court joins in, and for a moment, all the darkness that had gripped Wonderland is lifted. The White Queen then approaches Alice, handing her a vial filled with the Jabberwocky's blood. She explains that drinking it will allow Alice to return to her world. Though tempted to stay in Wonderland, Alice knows her journey isn't over yet. She drinks the potion and finds herself back at the garden party. Back in her world, Alice wastes no time. She rejects Hamish's marriage proposal, much to the shock of everyone present. She speaks her mind freely, challenging societal norms and expectations. Her newfound confidence catches the attention of Hamish's father, who sees potential in her boldness. Together, they discuss plans to expand the family's trading business, with Alice suggesting a venture into the untapped markets of China. In the final scene, Alice boards a ship named Wonder, setting off on a new adventure as an apprentice in the trading company. As the ship sails away, a bright blue butterfly, the reincarnated Abosalom, flutters by, reminding Alice that the spirit of Wonderland will always be with her.